all of you should be talking to advertisers like pretty much day in and day out, or you work with them. What is the one thing that you feel that's in top of their mind at this moment? So we can just do a round robin scenario quickly to just warm up the session. So I'll start with Isha, then Anand, then Frank. Isha, go ahead.
Short term, are their advertising costs going to increase for Q4? Which always the answer is yes. Long term, I think just understanding their marketing strategies for 24. There's a lot of changing and moving pieces. So they're trying to get ahead of it and really want to understand how they use their current data and how do they make sure that they're in the good place for 2024.
So most of the advertisers, I think, yes, as Isha said, 2024 planning, that's top of mind for most of them. But then the next one is how do you connect all the things? How do you make sure that the data that they're looking at is actually real and connects together? That's the biggest question that usually haunts most of the advertisers that I speak with.
And then from my perspective, I think it's a mixture of things. I think obviously there's the validity and reliability of the data piece. But I think the other piece is also is how does that actually return, like show a proof on ad spend, right? Am I actually getting a return on my investment in terms of am I acquiring more customers? Am I driving more traffic to my site or app? I think are top of mind, and also with the longevity of what future solutions are going to be in a cookieless world.
Interesting. I agree with most of the things, and then one thing to add on, especially since we have been dealing with a lot of measurement issues for people, we've been helping them solve that. Majorly, it's been around that trust in measurements, right? Like which measurement suit do I use? What do I trust? How do I read these numbers properly? What do I make sense of? Right? Like, is it really the right signal for me? Right? Comes about very strongly. And this is the thing that we'll address today as well, right? On what constitutes the signal and why is this an entire problem? And two, everybody is facing issues with identifying like their own customers coming back, right, to their stores or to their storefronts. It's becoming an issue of trying to figure out anonymity, right? So we're trying to help out people in that. And then with a lot of tracking going on in browser, caching up a lot of cookies, reliance on these, ID enrichment solutions is becoming lower. People are trying to figure out what's the best way to enrich their customers going forward. This is something that we're seeing quite coming about. So with that, let's get the show started off. So everyone, thank you so much for making it today. I'm Ashish again from LifeSide. We've been working with enterprise brands, mid-market brands, especially in e-commerce, retail, fintech, B2B, for helping them out in their measurement challenges, helping them acquire their customers better, provide them solutions to be able to understand their customer journey, fix a lot of issues with signal loss, and also enrichment for their customers. So I'm glad to put together this panel. We've been chatting for some time, and majorly the agenda of this panel is going to be addressing two things primarily: signal loss and identity, right? So from past 2 years, we as marketers, we as media buyers, we've worked with a lot of people, even today's panelists, they've built and worked with a lot of brands. We've seen iOS 17, iOS 14, ATT, all of this coming in, and this whole cookieless era being talked about. But everybody is still trying to figure out the game. Everybody's trying to figure out how do I set my business up? How do I make sure my systems and processes are ready for this new age and with privacy being an importance for consumers, how do you go about really connecting with them? How do you go about reaching to them? How do you go about really making them loyal and purchase from you is becoming an issue. And then we'll also look into factors out why you need a first-party data strategy moving forward. So let me introduce our speakers today. Right, so we have Isha. Isha comes with 9 years of experience in growth marketing. She's also a principal consultant of marketing analytics at ValueSurf. Isha holds pretty much a track record of working with B2B tech CPG companies, helping them they refine their marketing decisions, improving their customer journeys, enhance the ROI that somebody can get out of marketing. Thanks, Isha, for making it today. We have Frank, who is a digital advertising professional, again, with 9+ years of experience. He comes with a wealth of expertise in media buying, privacy laws. He comes with a huge, work in ad operations, and he believes that moving forward, even if you're doing direct or programmatic advertising, it's important to do it with the right mindset and keeping privacy in the minds of you and your users. We also have Anant, who's a head solutions architect, JPAC with Google Cloud. He's a subject matter expertise in data and analytics, has a decade of experience again, building advanced analytic solutions, advertising and measurement solutions. He also consults startups in his free time or trying to help them scale their product using Google Cloud. So thank you all for joining in today. Let's start the session with one question. Signal loss, right? What causes signal loss, right? And what has caused signal loss from the past 2 years? Frank, let's take it away.
Yeah, thanks again, Ashish, for having me here. So, I mean, obviously, we all kind of have heard about the big push towards a cookieless world. About what? Roughly 61% of users use Google Chrome, which Chrome has consistently said now for the past couple of years that they're going to go ahead and deprecate third-party cookies. And I mean, let's face it hasn't happened just yet. They're aiming to apparently start rolling it out slowly in 2024 and then roll it out completely at the end of 2024 if all goes well. But as we know, I don't think Google is going to necessarily do that if it's going to deprecate their ads business, because the majority of their business is advertising. So we'll see if that push comes to shove. But in a cookieless world, people are kind of uncertain, like, how am I going to go ahead and, get a proof on ad spend here? How do I know that I'm actually reaching, users that are actual consumers of my brand or my product or my service? And so, those are definitely things that a lot of marketers and advertisers are kind of questioning, like, what can I do? And obviously on this call, we'll kind of discuss that later on. Another piece as to why there's been immense signal loss, which has been long standing beyond these 2 years, is walled gardens. I mean, obviously, it's a case where if you're using a Google product, you're going to have access to the data in that walled garden, but it's not really that granular or descriptive. And again, some of it is a mixture of opt-in data. Most of it is going to be behavioral data, but you can't really match it on like a customer basis to really build a robust profile around that customer in your CRM, right? You're just relying on Google that they're actually giving you pertinent information that's actually pertinent to your business so you can make the right decisions on how you allocate your ad spend into different media channels. And then also the other thing that's coming, that's been present in the UK and EU for some time now with the inception of GDPR, but now it's becoming more and more prevalent here in the United States, especially in the general market, which would be above 13, because under U13, they've had child data privacy protections in place since 2012 now, easily. Different states are enacting different privacy laws. Some have a little nuances, like, it only applies to businesses of certain sizes. But I mean, overall, it's giving consumers more control over their data, especially anything that's related to their personal identifiable information, or PII. So that gives them rights to request, hey, I want you to delete this data. I don't want you to have this on me. So again, that's a huge piece of signal loss right there. There's even, gives them the right to actually understand, what do you have on me? How are you using it, and how are you sharing it? So again, data providers that think that they can house this treasure trove of first-party data that they collected, and they think that it's never going to change, could be a point where a user reaches out and says, hey, I want to go ahead and have this deleted. Please don't sell my information. And that also kind of plays into, Apple's ATT framework, where again, users right off the bat from an operating system, kind of line is where they can just set immediately at the beginning, I don't want to be tracked on any websites. I don't want to be tracked across any apps. And that pretty much also closes that trove of data as well. So it's definitely becoming a lot more of a complex landscape in terms of navigating privacy laws, these frameworks that allow people to initially just opt out right altogether, and things that have already been prevalent for some time, like walled gardens, and obviously the push towards a cookieless world, which more and more browsers are adopting over time.
With all of these issues coming in, what are some of like, precautions or proactive measures that, you have seen people take and people are yet to take? Let's start with what are some of the things that you've seen people take this year to get on this? And what are some of the things that you see people are not doing yet?
So I see people are kind of a little reluctant to get into specific states that are about to enact privacy laws or they're already in place because they're not really sure how to navigate it. They think that they have to have a nuanced approach for different states. And in some situations, some businesses say, hey, this market in this particular state is very small for me. It's not even worth scratching that itch. So they just avoid it altogether. I don't think it's something to necessarily shy away from. I think that it's a case where you just have to go to strategies that have kind of already been proven in the past, like contextual strategies. One, again, you can do first-party data collection. It's not like you can't do first-party data collection. You just have to have obviously ways for users to ask the, hey, don't track my data, don't sell it, and B, just have a privacy policy that's robust, that has those things in place too, because you can also get in trouble for not having that privacy policy that users can access and understand easily and know what they can and cannot do with their data that you've collected. And then also that we've seen from the IAB, there's always been the transparency compliancy framework, which has kind of already been, formed ahead of all of this because obviously the EU and UK has had GDPR for a while now, and they've been trying to figure out a way, how can we easily have a consent string that users can understand who's collecting their data and how can, they say, no, I don't want my data to be collected in a very clean and, digital first way. So we're kind of seeing more push for that in the space. And I kind of see that as being a continued push in the space. It's just having a compliancy like framework that somebody can easily consent to or, pull consent from at any time.
There's one thing which is really clearly coming about when we talk to marketers, right? One is that, hey, the customer journey, which currently GA4 is showing or something like that, is really not tying up to how I'm seeing it happen. And all the attribution which I'm getting in GA4, it's really not providing me the right data in terms of, hey, this is where my traffic is coming from. This is where people are buying from me, right? Why is this happening? And where do you think, people are missing out into analyzing different points of the customer journey? And what are some of the things, being lost during this way when somebody's trying to figure this out?
Let me take a step back here, right? Like customer lifecycle and understanding that customer journey is one of the most important parts of running your marketing ROI. And it ties very quickly to how well you're understanding that journey, to how well you're translating into your customer segments. And then that effectively affects your marketing ROI. With that being said, there's a bunch of different ways that companies can look at or different frameworks that you can use to understand customer journeys. The most simple one being your awareness, interest, desire, action. But I particularly like to go a little bit beyond action and actually look at posts. Like once you've converted as a customer, what's the revenue, what's the referral from there? And the referral part to me is extremely important because it's always cheaper to keep an existing customer. As we know, I think it's like 5 times more expensive to get a new or acquire a new customer than to keep your existing ones. And part of understanding that customer journey is really, like you said, looking for those signals and the context behind those signals. I'll give you an example. Someone going to the pricing page has, with different contexts behind, has different implications in that journey. So for example, someone going to the pricing page at awareness versus the activation or the actual conversion, or even an existing client going to the pricing page at the retention stage when the renewal's coming up. All of them have different implications behind each of it. So really understanding what some of these signals are is super important, and understanding the context behind them and building these journeys with that. Some examples of signals could look like number of website visits, the frequency of website visits, how often is that person coming back? And all these examples just keep context in mind. What are the sources of traffic that's driving these? Which sources of traffic are driving profitable customers versus volume of customers? You can deep dive and analyze those. What are your add to carts if you're looking for B2B? What are your book to meetings? What's cart abandonment? And even for your existing customers, signals like what is your product usage like? If you have benchmarks that are set where, let's say you have a SaaS product where someone on an average, your benchmark is they're using it twice a week to help with whatever they're trying to do, but you have a new customer that was onboarded and you see that the login for that has been twice a month versus twice a week for what the benchmark is, you know that this could potentially be a customer that isn't either fully utilizing what the product is supposed to be for. There's room for improvement, basically, there. And there are ways that then marketers can come back. And once, I think I've seen a lot of customer experience teams look at post customer data to really understand product usage and how can they maximize this. And then from there, some of the current challenges that we see, there's a whole bunch, but some of the main ones that we see is, it's first of all, collecting and building that customer journey is a complex task. You have technology that's constantly changing. There's a new tool in the market every year, which is better than the ones that you had before, but adopting new tools isn't the easiest thing depending on the scale of the business that you have. So you want to make sure you're picking something that is right and it fits in within your ecosystem, but at the same time can last however long you need it to. There's the world of privacy laws that are also changing. So building that customer journey, if there are laws that change and there's different geographies that come into play, GDPR with your European customers, you have CCPA in the US. So there's different laws and privacies that you have to account for. And then there is, of course, ever-changing customer behavior. But with these three in mind, I think that four main challenges for building the customer journey right now is you have fragmented customer journeys. All of us use multiple devices. You're researching something on your phone, you're then going on your desktop, you're going back on your phone. So there's multiple ways that someone's getting that information. And how do you, as a marketer, combine all of this for accuracy, not just combine it to get, a made up customer journey, but get the right one. You have, like I said, the data privacy laws. Then there is a world which, for a complete different type of clients, you have online and offline data. You have, for customers, let's say within CPG, you have people that go in and make purchases in store. How do you actually combine those two? And then I think the fourth most biggest challenge that's coming up is now deprecation of the third-party cookies, which really takes away from, once you want to continue to understand your customers, it takes away from their behavior and understanding what that behavior looked like in the past and how does that lead them to you.
I think we touched upon a lot of challenges here, and most of every conversation I've had with either a person being in a conference in today's world, in the ad tech space and the martech space, everybody's talking about this entire thing of having that first party data in place to be able to solve a lot of these problems, right? And the first thing which primarily people are worried about in terms of hey, what's the first party data stack here, right? How do I go about unifying all of this? How do I build my foundations to be able to get all of this data in one place? How do I even make sense out of this data, right? So what are some of the things that you suggest for them to take a first-party approach to things and not a third-party approach?
So for people to really understand their first-party data, I would think of this as, how do you go ahead about, what's your game plan to start focusing on first-party data? And, how do you really build it's not a one-person effort. It goes into different teams. I think the first step, and I believe Frank or Anand touches on this in just a bit, so I won't take their glory away from that. But the first step, I think, is really your executive buy-in. Right now, a lot of times people don't understand why we need to shift towards first-party data, but one is really explaining the value that comes for that. And then two is gathering the resources. So early on, understand what are the resources that you need as you're trying to pitch this to a team and to your executives. Second, I would say is really understanding or gathering the buy-in from your teams that are around you. And like I said, there's a lot of different teams. Product teams are implicated by this. Your customer service teams, your legal teams are heavily involved. So you really need a buy-in from them to be able to make sure that you're all on the same page and there's a cross-function collaboration here. I think the third is to really look at what your current data collection infrastructure looks like. What is it that we're collecting right now? And I'm a big proponent for let's use what we can, what we have right now before, we go ahead and buy all the new tools, and let's evaluate. So you're doing an audit of your current data. How much of it is first party? What are you getting right now? And what are you missing for you to be able to have that ideal first party, your one view of your customer? From there, I think it's important for you to also build trust from your customer. So you're not just buying in with your executives and internal team, but you actually need to have privacy policies in place. You need to be able to offer consent from your customer. And the last, to educate them about, hey, this is a shift that we are making as a company, and it's what's happening. Because the more transparent you are, the better it is, versus going down the road and suddenly a customer being, hey, you've collected all of this data on me. I don't know about that. Hold up. That's what led to a lot of the privacy laws coming into place right now. So you want to avoid that situation.
And when it comes to relying on a third-party data infra, most of the people have been doing this, right? But on the other hand, when you want to sit and build your own infra with millions of data sitting with you, with millions of apps interacting with you, and with the millions of customers interacting with them, it becomes a much more bigger thing to look for, as if you're building an entire worldwide city all by yourself, right? And you're trying to make that city trustworthy to be able to make sure your business decisions are very reliant on them. So it takes a lot when it comes to trying to figure this out, and especially if you're a bigger brand, how do you go about really what are the step-by-step things that one needs to take to build this infra? Then, to build this infra, ask that entire budget and resources, from the C-suite, especially if you're dealing with that enormous amount of data.
Thanks for that question. I think most of the time when I speak with customers, they do not gauge the size of the data that they may get. And sometimes they start either too big or too small. So first, as Isha said, is to audit what you have. And it's a very important step in understanding and cataloging what kind of data you already have, what kind of data sources can you tap into, sizing it out, and also understanding what kind of use cases do your internal marketeers have before embarking on this journey of building a first-party data warehouse or a first-party data strategy. Because defining the use cases will help define what kind of data you want to bring in. It does not make sense, and especially in this privacy-safe world, it does not make sense to collect everything that I can and then figuring out what I would use it for. So important to identify what use cases you have. And then the other important aspect of this is once you have this data, you have a lot of users who may be technical users, who may be non-technical users. So figuring out the infrastructure which is suitable for both scenarios. So for example, if it is a marketeer who is going to look at the the conversion data that is coming in and then figure out a marketing strategy to be applied, whereas another case can be a data engineer creating a real-time data pipeline, which is feeding your website to personalize the user experience in real time. So if a person is going to a product page and then somehow the expected behavior is for that person to add that product to a cart, but instead that person goes to something else, how do I in real time personalize that experience so that I can give the best value to that customer who is online at this point in time. So the infra for both of them are completely different. Now, with Google Cloud or any other infrastructure provider, you have these huge data warehouses which can help you churn this data in real time. So the critical part is to create a data pipeline. So that's step one, to create a data pipeline from your data sources. It can be your website, your app, in real time into a data warehouse which can stream it in. And then from there on, you can have, depending on your use case, real-time situations or some sort of analytics situations where you don't need the data in real time, but you are churning a lot of data. So just to give you an example, I was working with one customer who wanted to create a user segmentation. Now, typically running a user segmentation on Python versus running a user segmentation using K-means cluster on a Hadoop or a BigQuery kind of a situation takes the time from 18 hours to 10 minutes. So choice of tool is super important when you come to your data warehouse and first party strategy. But the most important thing is to identify what data sources you have and what you need it for.
That's a good step. How much does it take from a cost wise, to be really frank, right? Let's come down to the cost. If I'm dealing with, say, for example, millions of data coming in every day, how much does somebody need to really go about putting that money? And how does somebody convince that much amount of money to be invested?
I think I'll let others chime in as well. The first and foremost thing is this is money well spent. This is investment. So the question should not be, is this quantum big or small? The question should be, is the ROI right? So these are investments that the organization needs to make to build an ROI to get a returns. So the question should be an ROI question and not, is it like $1 million or $10 million or 100K?
I think the dollar amount is really hard to predict ahead of time because there's so many different variables with it. How much data do you have? What do you need it for? How are you using it? What are the teams that are impacted? But really showing, like Anand said, the value of what first-party data can do for you. And there's a ton of companies that have those use cases, Starbucks being one of the top ones, right? With their loyalty programs, really taking in and understanding their first party data and what they've been able to do with that, the programs you can build out from there for your customers. There's proven value. There are case studies that have that. But I think per company, it's just really hard to put a number ahead of time.
In the third party world, and even in the first party world, from an advertiser's point of view, they always want to reach customers who will potentially buy from them. They'll always want to, give them enough reasons, enough value out there to be able to, to go into that phase that you were talking about, right? Awareness, consideration, trust, purchase, post-purchase, right? So most of the times right now, as I was talking to you, in the first, many of them are facing issues with identifying people, right, who are coming, knocking on the doors. And then if this is the issue, right, how do I go about really reaching that mass audience, that ICP that I've all defined and researched about? And I'm wishing that more, tons of them really come knocking at my doors. How is somebody doing this in the third party world, and how does somebody should be doing this moving on in the cookieless era?
I think there are a bunch. Right now, you have the option of relying on third-party cookies where you're tracking your customers that have lookalike audiences, all of those things that are available features right now, and you can tap into those. But of course, you have to start thinking of a world of what happens if that doesn't exist anymore. There are a whole bunch of solutions that are out there. Not fully concrete, not fully built, because we're all in this together. We're going through it at the same time. And there's a couple of different ways. Top of mind for me right now is like contextual advertising. A lot of times you're able to me, this also goes back a little bit, right? Like you're talking about the days of advertising in newspapers where you had in the sports section, you had Nike ads as an example. So that taps into the ideology of where's their mindset at right now? And there are ways where you can amplify that. So think of that as a mindset that you're amplifying. So you have your basic contextual advertising, you have tools and platforms that now take what was contextual advertising and have a little bit of more data science behind it. So it gives you slightly more accurate results. There's the world of geo-targeting, which again, you're looking at your basics of demographics. And I've personally seen an uprise in out-of-home advertising coming back in a lot of ways. I think that also goes to speak about how digital has been getting a little saturated, and how there's been a lot of focus on digital for the last few years, and out of home was almost questionable to a point where you were like, does that prove ROI? But they're taking out of home and you're adding things like QR codes that allow you to track something, but with the advantage of millions of eyeballs on something.
Are you hinting that, like, see, not many people really can go out of home because, like, it takes a little bit of established brand to really know what they are. So if I'm in, like, still in the digital zone and I'm trying to reach audiences, what should I still do?
Sure. So, I mean, these options are while you're, building your first party data. I will say the number one focus right now is focus on really trying to understand and build your first party data. But for smaller companies where outdoor advertising isn't as big of an option, I'll give an example of a company that I'm working with where their target audience is very, very niche in very rural areas. So it doesn't make sense for them to put massive billboards up in cities or any of that. But what we did for them is really taking contextual advertising, but on a very small budget, we used local supermarkets and literally the strollers that you would have there, but that was their target audience. And we actually saw a lot of views and add to carts and actually conversions all the way through the funnel come in through there. So really just taking a step back, think about who your customer is. Like, that's always for me an approach with marketing is, who is your customer and where are they consuming media from? And with that, then you also have a couple of other solutions in the digital world that have come up, which is your walled gardens. It's, echoed by someone before. You have your Metas, Amazon, Googles that do have a ton of first party data, and you can always continue to advertise with them, knowing that if the end result proves for it to be what it is, you're not going to get all the insights in terms of first party that you need there, but your conversions are still there.
We in LifeSite, we deal with both ends of the spectrum, right? Like, while one product of ours provides out-of-home services, we have, our measure really speak more about trying to understand this whole problem of universal attribution. Everyone tried to figure out, like, every platform again provides their own numbers, their own ROASes, their own outputs. And again, consolidation of all those measurements becomes somebody has to sit and really do that. So, like, everybody is talking about this universal attribution suite coming into play, and we're trying to also provide that for people. And then eventually, with as you grow as a brand, you go back into the traditional TV, OH. There's a lot of offline engagement as well. And then you have your retail store, right, where people are coming and buying from you. So in this world, right, let's say for the good of term, it's a connected commerce world, right, from both online and offline. Measuring this, right, will be a huge task, right, for people. So while multi-touch attribution and all these stuff have been, used from a long period of time, we've seen even folks like Google come and implement stuff like marketing mix modeling, which has been there for a long time. And then we are also providing, like, the entire no-code way of doing that table. In the end, everything is all about time, right? Let's also talk about time, because the amount of time that data engineers, data scientists spend in data modeling is a huge ton of task. huge ton of cost, and there's a lot of time which takes to even like pull in all those data and build the model. So in the end, we're also envisioning a world where everything is one click, and let the model get refreshed by itself, let the data flow in. Like all you have to do is primarily get up on a Monday morning and say that, hey, okay, this is where I'm going to put my money in. This is where is my prediction coming through. And I think this is possible right now. So, Frank, just coming on to that, right? So, with all of these advanced measurement techniques coming in, right? Do you think that somebody needs to move from the attribution world, start really trusting for things like marketing mix modeling, and then eventually coming back to doing your geo testing, right? To be able to put those budgets out there, geo test it out with the right kind of customer and build a model. So, do you think this is something that like advertisers need to start adopting moving forward? If so, why? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for several different reasons. First being obviously from, a return on investment, right? As Isha said earlier, it's very expensive to acquire new customers. And also she said, and I agree 100% on this, is like not every channel of media is going to resonate with your particular audience, right? Consumers are very varied sometimes. Like, for example, Lamborghini doesn't advertise on TV because the individuals that can buy a Lamborghini is not watching TV, right? Those are typically in like high-end publications like Entrepreneur and so on and so forth, because that's where their audience lives and consumes media. So I think having a mixed media model in place where you're kind of testing out ad budgets across different channels of media, everything from like, audio, which would be like podcasts or radio, to, linear TV, to streaming, to being in-app placements, web, and figuring out where your audience is, especially if you're a business that's really just starting to grow, your business, right? You can kind of get a better understanding of where your audience lives and who your audience is, one. And then two, figure out which channels are actually giving you the best conversion in that case, right? From a cost perspective. And also like you understand your consumer more. So like, again, going back to that, beyond the numbers understanding, like you understand where your users dwell. And from there, you can also pick out other affinities that they potentially have, which could tie into your, later product development on what they would actually see as value and potentially purchase. So I think like that's very important overall to have like, again, not to focus on one channel of media at a time, but kind of spread out your budget and then make quick determinations. Kind of look obviously behind the data, but make determinations in that moment. Okay, looks like channel A is not doing well. Looks like audio is not a thing that resonates with our audience. Nobody's really there. But it seems like in-app video is doing very well across particular like casual gaming apps. Let's go ahead and take a little bit more money from audio, and then let's go ahead and funnel into that channel that makes sense. Make those changes to actually prove again, is this just the way the numbers are laying out now? Because it could be a case where you do allocate more to that other channel and it doesn't actually perform that well. The results kind of stay static. So you definitely want to figure that out first. And then, from there, you take those learnings and you move it into each and every campaign moving forward, which will just make you more and more efficient at your media buying overall. And also, like, don't be afraid to do, incremental tests as well. Like, figure out, is your campaigns actually effective, right? Because, for example, one of the greatest types of marketing is organic marketing, right? Those moments where you get that free exposure and all of a sudden you get a huge hit and adoption. Like, for example, there was a billboard for Diablo 4, a game that came out earlier this year. And unfortunately, here in New York, we had those Canadian forest fires that caused literally the sky to turn red. It looked like it was the end of the world. And it just so happened that Diablo came out during that time. And it was a billboard that got so much attention that people were making memes. And those memes actually drove more conversion and adoption of that game than anything else. Another great example is Dasha. Dasha is this like kind of sparkling beverage in the UK. They capitalized on the fact that, Prince Harry was coming back. There's a lot of controversy around that in the royal family. And someone was holding up just a simple poster board that says, even though Harry may not want the spotlight, we do. And that also became a huge meme sensation. So I would say don't be afraid to kind of experiment with different things to see what works for you, especially if it's free. I think that's like the overall thing. And also, even when you have like a customer base, like an actual CRM built out with customers, really figure out, are my media efforts towards my current customers effective, right? And you can do that obviously through like testing, where you obviously have a group that's exposed to, let's say, something as simple as like a notification email that gives like different articles and topics to kind of go ahead and push users back to your site, right? And then you can obviously have a good portion of users that are not exposed to it. And you kind of see what your stick rates are. Like, does this actually, increase the amount of like dwell time on my site? Do individuals actually, go beyond the first couple of pages? Do they explore other articles that weren't highlighted in there? And it can kind of give you an idea of, again, how to craft your product or your service or your website to go ahead and have that continued customer engagement with your current customers. Because as Isha pointed out earlier, those are going to be your, like kind of least amount of cost overall, right? Is spending money on your current customers to get them to buy more.
There's one thing which is of huge concern, even in an enterprise brand or a growing brand, which is primarily coming back to the age-old days of PR, right? So, for example, when we do that entire PR release, that brand lift happens, but what's the ROI, right? That big question even still lingers on, right, in every budget approval conversations. And I've seen a lot of advertisers and marketers still struggle to validate and prove that ROI for their brand efforts. This is a huge concern because moving ahead, if you need to really build a sustainable business for yourself, you need to invest in brand, you need to invest in community, you need to invest in making sure the relevant audience comes, interacts with you, build that loyalty, and you grow, right? So I would love if all of you can, put points on how does somebody go about measuring their brand awareness campaigns, and how do you really prove that ROI moving forward? Because there are so many tools now available at the disposal of marketers, but still, this is a big question.
So I think like if you're taking it from an advertising perspective, you're looking at ad performance, and that ad performance is obviously going to be different depending on the format of the ad. So in a brand awareness, type of situation, you also want to choose the right format. Like if you're looking for conversion, like you want to have a user click to find out more, to go to your website, potentially buy, you obviously don't want to probably do video most of the time, unless the video, you can kind of get very niche there, where you can do interactive units that kind of create more engagement. But overall, like video would probably be not the best medium, but it would be a good medium for brand awareness. And how you can measure the success of that brand awareness is how far along the user got along in that ad. Like, did they watch it to completion? Like, what's the overall completion rate for that particular video unit? If it's an interactive unit, what was the level of engagement? Like, did the user interact with the different engagement elements throughout the duration of the video, or did they just sit there and just wait until the ad was over, or until they could go ahead and skip it? And I think, like, it's you got to really understand what is it that you're looking for overall with a campaign. Like, what is my KPIs? Like, how am I attributing success to my spend here? And just make sure that you're kind of choosing particular ad formats that align with that, and not expect like, hey, if I just put a simple pre-roll video, I expect that I'm going to have a CTR of 17%. Well, that's likely not going to happen, because on average, CTR is going to be very low for a video unit. You mainly want to probably look at VCR and other metrics that kind of paint a better picture of brand awareness, if that's what your goal is.
This one to me is very personal, because I actually started my career in PR and pivoted very quickly for the exact reason. I was like, what's the ROI? And it's like, I don't know. But one of the reasons, or one of the major things that we're seeing right now, is there is actually an acceptance of, there is a certain if you're marketing that you're not going to be able to track. And that's tough. That's a hard pill to digest. But there's a couple of factors that change this. Of course, we have the world of PR that you get your eyeballs on. But digitally, there's a world where there are things like communities that are online. You have Reddit that's online. You have people that leave reviews on third-party sites that you can't really control that cause that conversion to either drop or to increase. You have word of mouth marketing, which is one of those that has always been the hardest to measure, right? So from our side, what we're seeing is there is an acceptance of this exact marketing dollar might not be able to be tracked 100%, but let's look at the overall marketing lift that we're seeing. So we'll look at, for brand awareness in particular, you have some of I know Frank mentioned some of the social metrics that you can look at on platforms. For us, like let's say on owned media, we'll look at your organic. So we'll look at, for me, there's a difference between if someone did find your ad interesting and they found you for the first time, are they going to engage with your account? And social platforms allow you to track new users versus existing, and to be able to understand, is my number of new users growing? On your website, what are a number of new website visitors that are coming? I think being able to understand like brand lift, to me, you have the idea of awareness and conversion, but there are steps in between, right? So let's say for an e-commerce brand, someone that never knew you before found you, but they might not be ready to purchase just yet. A lot of times they might. You have people that will see an ad once and, great to go, best kind of customers, but you have those that do want to research a little bit. And of course, it depends from industry to industry as well. But with one of my B2B2C clients, what we did was implemented surveys with the dealers in the middle. So we're launching a brand new product, and it was a 30-second survey, which is like, hey, have you heard of more people asking for this brand than you did a year ago? And the answer was yes for a lot of them. So we're like, okay, we know that, we're not directly selling to the end customer, but at least we're getting data that more customers are asking about this product. And then you look for online signals that we were talking about earlier, where, for example, website visits, about us, that's an important page for a lot of times when you, like, if you think about it, it's one of those fluff pages almost, but it does, for a new brand, help define who they are, and seeing visits that increase there. So between those awareness to conversion, like that's a midpoint to me, where if that increases, and then there are tools that we use to like look at mentions that you have, the social clouds that you look at the words that are associated with yours and how does that changing. We track how many people are talking about or trending hashtags that come up for us, like is that a number that has increased?
But let me put a use case to you, right? So I have a good social cloud. Let's say my brand is building on LinkedIn or on Instagram, and somebody discovers my brand there, but goes to Google and searches my brand, and the ad shows up, right? Right there, and then you click. So in the back end, this is getting attributed to actually the Google ad, but it's not exactly attributing to the brand awareness that you're doing. How does somebody fix this problem? Or do we accept that this is not this is a problem we cannot fix?
If that particular person is interacting with your brand, be it on social platforms, there are mechanisms which some of the social platforms do make available for you to connect those I would say user paths to the user path that the user lands once you have. And this is a great point of actually building your first party data. Because if you don't have a first party data, you cannot connect the dots, because each of the data points are living in their own silos. And having a first party data enables you as an advertiser to build that connection. The key aspect here is with consent. So if the user that you're tracking has consented, it allows you to compliantly connect these 2 points. And with multi-touch attribution, you can then say, okay, the user was originally acquired through an upper funnel brand sort of an activation. And then the user is progressing through the funnel by searching, and because search is a very strong intent, the user is progressing through the purchase intent or whatever intent, and then going down the funnel through search and other media.
I am glad we closed that loop and came back to the first story of building first party data. So that's pretty much, I think, the biggest takeaway from today with all of the things that we talked about, build that first party data infrastructure right this quarter so that you set yourself for success. You also rely on like latest advanced measurement tools. You also make sure that you're taking care of privacy loss, and you're talking to your customers, you're understanding them a lot more better, you're understanding where they are, and you're attributing to all of your campaigns where you're trying to reach out to them. And then moving forward, it's also really important that you connect all of that data sources into one place. That unification is really important from measurement standpoint, from data standpoint, and then in the end, it all serves for the purpose of you trying to figure out that ROI for each channel or for each kind of customer that you're trying to attribute to. And I think this is something that everybody needs to look forward so that they can just not have success for the cookieless era, but I think for the success of the business and their marketing initiatives in itself, there's much more granularity and clarity when it comes to doing this. Even if you're a growing brand or you're at an enterprise level trying to figure this out. So yeah, we're all here trying to sail the same ship. We're trying to enable brands to do that. And we in LifeSite, we literally do this day in and day out with people. Krishna has a question: which data is more viable to see, last click or data-driven Google Ads?
I think viable is like both of them are equally good depending on what kind of campaigns you're running. If the goal is a very lower funnel campaign, then last click makes sense to look at. If you want to look a holistic view, then a data-driven model gives you a more holistic view from upper funnel to lower funnel in terms of what's the overall contribution of different campaigns that you have run, contributing to that one conversion that's happening on your platform.
Thanks, Anand. Folks, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for making it today. And, feel free to connect with Anand, Tisha, and Frank and chat more with them, connect more, talk about your challenges and all of that. So we in LifeSite, we do this. We give back to the community. We bring in the like-minded folks to talk a lot about how advertisers can solve their problems moving forward. So own your measurements, own your first-party data infrastructures, provide great customer experiences as well while you do this. And yeah, you gotta have a great product. I keep telling that because it is a need. It's a must right now. It's a must that you have a great product. Everything above comes about that, and then eventually start prepping up your team, your tools, all of your resources into less stack, more ROI approach, right? Less tools, more ROI approach moving forward, because the more unification, the more lean you get, you have enough time to really build business out there. What I mean by that is do your creative experiments, do your ad experiments, expand your business to different locations, and then eventually, get that word of mouth kick in from your customers, and then take off, in the hockey stick curve. So with that, thank you all for joining in. Hope everyone had a great time. Feel free to go and write about all the learnings that you've had on LinkedIn, wherever you want to do. This is something that we should not keep within ourselves, and share it to our friends and people and community out there. So have a great week. Let's go into this privacy first era with our head high, and be successful moving forward. So thanks, Isha, Frank, Anand, for tuning in. This has been a great chat.
Thanks for having us, Ashish.
Yeah, thank you for having us.